Hello. Hey again. Hi there. You there? You
Hi
here?
there.
Hey, thanks for setting that up. Hopefully this guy will call me tomorrow.
Oh, he will. He'll call you.
All right. He
You
wasn't
like
great.
it?
Wasn't it great as explaining the stuff? I think we have to get it. So, but I'm gonna see what he can do to what I spoke to Lori a few minutes ago, and she said she thought if I can get it for the temple for 1,000 and then pay 2,000 through the foundation, that would be a good deal, right?
Well, that would be a fabulous deal.
So hopefully, hopefully it will. I'll be able to do it. All right, I'll start letting people, and I'll talk to you about it later. But hopefully, I'll talk to you tomorrow after I speak to him.
Okay.
I promise you, I'll give him a call. But I think it'd be great. Hello. Hello. Hey, Mike. Mike and Mary. Hey there.
That's it.
Where is everybody? Well, people are coming in. I know they're not able to come on tonight, Kelly and Philip, but hopefully some of our other friends will be there. And
Hear the Dodgers signed Mookie?
I did, for a ridiculous amount of money. So I don't know how you can evaluate him after just a few weeks, but not a few weeks, after a week or whatever before, and now 2 games. But I mean, they have so much money. Like, how do you make sense of it all? I just think it means that a lot of other people probably are not going to be getting money, but
Probably won't sign Turner now.
not Turner, not Peterson, not, I guess Peterson's, how long is Peterson good for now? I can't even remember. Wasn't it just
I
like
think another year or so, but Kiki's contract's up this year.
I think Peterson was just extended for a year, so he'll be gone. I don't know. I mean, seems to me like there are going to be some Dodgers that aren't going to get re-signed now. Some Dodgers who've been there for more than a couple of games. So I hope well, listen, thanks for that. We should post that thing about Kareem, though.
Absolutely. I thought that was just, when I read that, I said, okay, is that true? And I looked up a couple other areas, and the story goes that it sounds like it's true. Because I saw another article from 2011 where he actually went to Israel to meet him in 11.
I know that they had a meeting. The whole thing is just, yeah. I mean, I guess it's mostly true. I mean, it's mostly verified. It's been verified, so it's kind of amazing.
But I find it amazing in World War II that Ferdinand Louis Alcindor Sr. was actually in a regiment with white people too, with white soldiers.
Well, I don't know if he was. That's the thing. There was a movie about this. It was called Liberators, and I don't know if he was in it. It was about African Americans who, it came out in, I think it came out in, I think it was called The Liberators. Maybe not. It was about African Americans who helped liberate.
Oh, really? Because
I thought it was about Japanese Americans, but maybe it was. No. It was called Liberators, fighting on 2 fronts in World War II. There was something. It wasn't a movie, but somebody wrote a story or an article. So this was 1992. It was done by Bill Miles and Nina Rosenblum, and it featured Denzel Washington, Lou Gossett, and Leon Bass. Documentary of African-American battalions, which spearheaded General Patton's Third Army to help liberate Nazi concentration camps.
But it's funny because I've read a lot of biographies over the years, and one biography of Sammy Davis Jr. I read, where he was beaten up and stuff in World War II. He was not in a black he was with Mick. So
Yeah, I don't know what the I don't know how people got placed in units that were either all black. That's another thing I don't know.
yeah,
Yeah, but I don't know if his father was in that with you'd think in that Liberators movie. Yeah, his Alcindor's, Francis Alcindor was not in that. Was not in that.
Hmm.
But it was narrated by, and it got nominated for Academy Award. I guess
Oh,
it
really?
didn't win, but it was nominated, and I do remember when it came out. So yeah, I don't.
We should try to get a hold of him and have him come to synagogue.
To have Kareem.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to talk about it.
Yeah, he did his piece was the best of anybody's Charles Barkley's was just was a little video, but his article was very well. Maybe we'll post the article, I'm talking about the Hollywood Reporter article. You saw it, right?
Right.
Hollywood.
Yeah. Oh, you mean at Kareem's? Yeah.
So his was the best, the argument over, not argument, whatever. The most reasoned and well-written response.
And that's coming from a Muslim.
A person who actually identifies as a Muslim, exactly.
Right.
Not like Ice Cube, who's just quoting.
Well, you also have to remember Kareem, when he was in, again, I'm reading biographies, he was a straight A student.
No, he's a smart,
Very intelligent.
smart guy. He wrote, what Kareem said is, why is it so hard for some people to learn no one is free until everyone is free?
Right.
And so let's act like it. If we're going to be outraged by injustice, let's be outraged by injustice against anyone. So, yeah, Charles Barkley said you can't fight hatred with more hatred, and that was really good too.
That's kind of what King said.
Yeah. So yeah, Kareem was really articulate. Oh, here's Joyce. Joyce is joining us. Hey, Joyce. I'm glad you're joining us on
Zoom.
On Zoom tonight instead of just on Facebook. So it's great to have you with us. Even more of you with us. So I don't know if you can hear me right now. I'm going to post it up on Facebook now, though, so that people who are joining us on Facebook will be able to watch and, if not participate. The problem is sometimes people comment on Facebook, and I don't see it until after we're done. So that's the one problem. It's hard for me to keep track of the Facebook. But I now have set up computers a little differently, so maybe I can. But I can't guarantee. It's hard for me to follow.
Are you in your office or are you in the library?
No, I'm in my office, and I have the way I have the computer set up. That's why in the morning it's really bad because the light is shining right at me. But in the evening it's okay. It just sometimes it gets a little dark. But yeah, we are now up on Facebook and sharing our Zoom screen. And
maybe you should explain what we're talking about to Harvey, since we've been talking. Probably Harvey has no clue what we're talking about.
With the Dodgers?
As far as Alcindor, Kareem.
So I'm going to post it up so you'll be able to see it. But Kareem Abdul-Jabbar had done a really nice piece in the Hollywood Reporter about why is nobody saying anything about anti-Semitism in the African American community, calling it out, and he did it in a really well written way and right to the point. And so then Mike just sent me an article about how his dad, Francis Alcindor, was part of a African American battalion that helped liberate See, that's the one. No, that's. I think it was Buchenwald, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, did you texted it to me, right? You didn't.
I
You didn't
texted it to you.
Yeah, that's why I was looking for it in the email, and it's not in the email; it's in a text. So,
You can find it on my Facebook site too.
okay, so I'll go to your Facebook. So, so this is the background, though, on one of the reasons why Kareem is so passionate about defending the Jewish community. He has a history. He has a let me go to Mike's page, and
While you're doing that, I'll just explain, Harvey. His father, Kareem's father, was one of the liberators of this concentration camp, and he actually helped save a young boy that turned out to be the chief rabbi in Israel.
Huh.
And his father's dying wish was for Kareem to go and meet this person. So in 2011, he went out to Israel and met the chief rabbi, this person that his father helped liberate.
Wow.
Yeah, I'll share the picture. There's a picture here with the
and I guess the son is now chief rabbi. Is that what I read?
Yeah.
David?
Rabbi Lau's son is
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm not going to be able to share. Hold it. You know what, folks? Don't go anywhere because hold it a second. Let me make sure. I'm using this computer. Oh, here we go. Let's see if this works. You got it?
Yeah.
The picture. So this is what
Yeah.
this is from Mike's Facebook page. That's Rabbi Lau, Yisrael Lau, the father. His son is now, there was another chief rabbi, and now, so he was chief rabbi like 2 times ago. So that's the one thing about this. Well, he did grow up to become the chief rabbi. He's just not the current chief rabbi. His son is the current chief rabbi. And then this is the picture of obviously Kareem next to him. So it's a great story of how both of these people ended up having an impact. So let us move over to the text, which we're going to start in a moment, because even though we don't have as a group as usual, as we usually do, we are going to start. And I want to just make sure I'm not leaving anybody out. And of course I am right now because I'm looking at too many screens. There's Ginny. Thank you, Ginny. Sorry for not being there right away. So we haven't started yet. We're about to start. We've got a bunch of people on Facebook too right now, so we are going to start. I have not posted. I have not posted my
Go back outside.
I haven't posted my video for my video Torah commentary for Devarim for the week, but in a weird way, it's already up there because it was part of the Jewish Journal today. I will share it up, and then I'm going to make the video of it. But the what they call the table for 5, which is my friend Sal's my friend Sal's contribution to the journal is to edit together what they call the table for 5. And so I will post that. I'll share it right now since I have it. But this is the I'm going to put it up here right now. This is the article. I can't find it right now. Anyways, we are going to have I put it up on my Facebook page already. The hold it a second. Trying to do too much at once. Jewish Journal. It's table for 5. Let me put it up here while we're waiting. Commentary. where is this thing here? Judaism here. Torah. So this is, I'm not going to talk about this today, though, as I said, I'm not going to, I'll let you read the piece when we get to it. I apologize because I thought it would be here. It's not here. I know it is because I got sent a link to it and I posted the link, but the new table for 5, let's see if it's down here. Hold it 1 second. Hukat Palak, poetry, that's Pinchas. Well, I apologize. I'm not going to waste any more time. But we have a Torah portion which kicks off the new oh, you know what? You know why? I didn't post it. I was going to post it later today or tomorrow. Instead, I posted a story in the Signal about our Hebrew school going online. So that was today's posting, which was a nice article about our Hebrew school, our religious school. So I'll post the Torah thing tomorrow. I don't want to post too much. But it is very interesting the way this portion, the way the book begins and the way the portion begins. Moses's repetition of the events from the Exodus. Well, not really actually from the Exodus, but from Mount Sinai. So rather than, well, at least at the beginning, he does kind of go back even further a little bit, Moses, obviously, but he really starts in the book of Deuteronomy with taking us to Mount Sinai. So from Mount Sinai to where he is right now, which is about to cross into the promised land, this is what Moses recounts at the beginning here. And what I was asked to comment on was the way this book begins, an interesting line here in the first chapter. So we'll take a look at the beginning of Deuteronomy this week, Devarim. In English, we use the Greek word Deuteronomy, which means the second telling, or the second kind of in Greek, it really is it's a kind of means telling it again. In Hebrew, the word means these words, Ele Devarim. These are the words that these are the words that Moses said to Israel. It's weird because the Greek word does capture what the theme of the whole book is, which is what a second telling is, what this is. But there is something interesting about the way Moses approaches this, which is approaches the second telling, which is that it's not just a telling. It's not repeating what happened before. It's really Moses' interpretation of it. And so it really is more than just a second telling. It's a new telling. It's his perspective. It's Moses' perspective, which in an interesting way is almost not a different story, but there are discrepancies, there are differences, which is why a lot of people, when they look at this on the face of it, a lot of people look at Deuteronomy and talk about, from a source criticism angle, they talk about how this book seems to be a completely different, from a different time period, and has a whole different approach to Jewish history than the previous books. So much so that some people also identify a whole different theology, a whole different worldview and approach to God in Deuteronomy than the rest of the first 4 books, in the sense that there seems to be a different approach to God and the way things are supposed to happen. So it's a substantial difference. If we kind of go along the traditional lines, which is that this is the product directly of Moses, without as much of God telling him this is what happens, or Moses dictating it, which is again kind of the Orthodox view of this. Or if we take the more kind of modern biblical history kind of historian archaeologist point of view, which is this work is a few hundred years after the other parts of the Bible and reflects the time when there was already a king of Israel and there's already a Jerusalem, which the other books don't seem to take for granted that there's a Jerusalem, or at least that Jerusalem is as a unified only capital is where all the sacrifices should be or where everything should happen. Deuteronomy takes that for granted. Whatever we have differences, and both the traditional and the more modern recognize that these differences are substantial. So just kind of keep that in mind as we read this. As we look at this, there is an approach to the text that is, we'll talk about it. I mean, we'll talk about it this week, and we'll talk about it in the weeks ahead. Why is this, and how is this different? Not so much why is this different. I mean, we can talk about that too, but really the bottom line is how is it different, and what do we learn from the differences? So let's jump into it, and let's take a look at what we've got in Devarim, or Deuteronomy, the retelling, the second telling. Oh, and by the way, there is another Hebrew. I meant to say this. There is another Hebrew name for this, which is the Mishneh Torah, or again, essentially a repetition of the Torah. So one of the Hebrew names of the book also captures this. This is a retelling. So it begins, Eleh HaDevarim. These are the words, these are the things that Moses addressed to all Israel on the other side of the Jordan, through the wilderness in the Arava near Suf, between Paran and Tophel, Laban, Chatzerot, and Di-Zahav. It is 11 days from Horeb to Kadesh Barnea by the Mount Seir route. So here's the interesting thing. Essentially, it's telling us that it's 11 days march from Horeb to Kadesh Barnea. So here's the weird thing about what we just read from a geographical, on a map. Let me try to bring it up right now. The map of what we're talking about. So let's take a look at it, shall we? What's important about this, folks, is what they're saying essentially. I'm going to bring it up. What they're essentially saying here is that it takes 11 days to journey from Mount Sinai, from Horeb, which is the other name for Mount Sinai, to where they are now. So let's take a look at this. Now, we looked at this map last week. This is not actually the map I want this week. I do not want this map. I would like to see this map right here. So let's take a look. Sorry about that. Let us use technology more efficiently. So from Mount Horeb to Kadesh is right here. Now Kadesh, right here where they marched, it takes 11 days to go from here to there. 11 days, that's what they said. This is the border. This is the border of Israel. The Wadi of Egypt, this is the biblical border of Israel. Everything here is today Egypt, and was captured by Israel and returned or given to Egypt after the Camp David Accords. But Kadesh Barnea is very close to the border of Israel. And again, probably about another week, 2 weeks to get to where they are right now, which is on the other side of the Dead Sea from the land of Israel. So it's kind of a halfway point, but this is kind of where they were when they sent in spies into the land of Israel. So it really isn't that far. It shouldn't take that long to get to the promised land, even by foot. so the weird thing here is that essentially to get to where they were with the spies, and then to get to where they could have been to cross over, even if they crossed over from the same place where they're crossing now, should have taken at most about a month, which means the 40 years is not even close to, like, don't think it would have taken like a year or 2 years to get to where they were, and then it just was a little bit longer. No, it's a whole different thing. This was a they would have been there in a month, and then they would have gone into the land and settled it within, again, a matter of maybe a few weeks after leaving Mount Sinai. That was the plan. I mean, essentially, that's what the Torah says. That's what God's plan is. It was in the 40th year, on the first day of the 11th month, that Moses addressed the Israelites in accordance with the instructions that the Lord had given him. After he had defeated Sihon, king of the Amorites, who dwelt in Heshbon, and King Og of Bashan, who dwelt at Ashtaroth and Edrei, which is what we read about last week, which was the victories over these other kings. And the week before, we read about Israel taking possession of land from the Canaanites, Canaanite kings. Amorite or Canaanite kings. Amorites are Canaanites. They took it away from them, and now Israel has even more territory. On the other side of the Jordan, in the land of Moab, Moses undertook to expound this teaching, and he said, and literally everything from here to the next, for the next 30 chapters, is Moses simply talking to the people. From this point on, this is all a retelling. That's it. I mean, literally, you have a few verses here at the beginning, and now we're launching into a flashback and into new teachings and warnings. I mean, it's not just a flashback. It's not just a retelling. Moses, adds to it, and God adds to it by the commandments that we get in here. But it's from now on. This is now Moses talking, or
except
not.
for the last couple verses.
Exactly, except for the last few verses. So, I mean, that's a pretty wild thing to think about. That, like, all of these chapters, we're supposed to, like, not forget when we next week and the week after and the week after that, when we come back into this, that this is Moses talking, and that doesn't end. And again, it's also, there's a good chunk of it that God is, or Moses is giving more commandments, but I mean, consider that. I mean, this is it. So from now on, think about this as in quotes. The rest of everything else, except for the last last chapter, is in quotes. Anyways, so the Lord, our God, spoke to us at Horeb, and again, it uses this other name for Sinai. Is that a major issue for authorship? Maybe, but the word Horeb is used in the first 4 books too. So this isn't the only place Horeb comes up, but it is a different name for Mount Sinai. Start out and make your way to the hill country of the Amorites, and to all their neighbors in the Arava, in the hill country of the Shephelah, the Negev, the seacoast, the land of the Canaanites, and the Lebanon, as far as the great river, the river Euphrates. I place the land at your disposal. Go take possession of the land that the Lord swore to your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to assign to them and to their heirs after them. So this is, again, take the land of Israel, which, again, to kind of, again, give everybody, well, that's not even the full map. This is not even the entire map of the land of Israel. The biblical land of Israel includes all the way, again, according to this, all the way to the Euphrates, which is pretty far up there, folks. Oh man. I'll show it on this map. This is the map I showed you last week, which is all the way up to here, which is modern day Lebanon too. I mean, I think the important thing to kind of focus on is that the land includes most of the modern day land of Israel, with, again, the West Bank, Judea and Samaria being a huge chunk of it, that part right there. And then also north, though, would also include quite a lot of Lebanon, which was all land of Canaan. I mean, those were Canaanites and Phoenicians are, basically the same peoples. Those are lands that were, according to the Torah, promised to us. So that's, keep that in mind as we go through this. We will have references back to the map and to places on it. So I'll keep that handy. Now here's the line that I commented on, that are these couple of verses. So here Moses says, I said to you, I cannot bear the burden of you by myself. The Lord your God has multiplied you until you are today, as numerous as the stars in the sky. May the Lord, the God of your fathers, increase your numbers 1,000-fold and bless you as he promised you. How can I bear the unaided trouble of you and the burden and the bickering? Pick from each of you of your tribes men who are wise, discerning, and I will appoint them on your heads. You answered me and said, what you propose to do is good. So I took your tribal leaders, wise and experienced men, and appointed them heads over you, chief of thousands, chiefs of hundreds, chiefs of 50s, 10s, and officials of your tribe. I charged your magistrates at that time as follows. Hear out your fellow men and decide justly between any man and fellow Israelite or a stranger. You shall not be partial in judgment. Hear out low and high alike. Fear no man, for the judgment is God's. And any matter that is too difficult for you, you shall bring it to me, and I will hear it. Thus I instructed you at that time about the various things you should do. That was at Mount Sinai. Now, he does go back, and we will read next week. That's not all, of course, that happened at Mount Sinai. But that's at the beginning, again, for those who remember and were with us. This is at the beginning of Parshat Yitro. This is the portion of Jethro, right? Back in chapter 18 of Exodus, we hear about Moses placing chieftains over the people at Mount Sinai. We read about this. This is the same portion that they get the Ten Commandments. This happens. But this account is totally different. First of all, somebody here, tell me what's one of the main things that's different here? What's one of the main things? This is there's a key person not here, not mentioned. Somebody? Anybody?
Aaron.
Aaron's not mentioned. That's true. But there's a real important point here. When we read about this in Yitro, it was his idea. It wasn't Moses' idea. Moses didn't go, things were really hard for me because people were arguing and bickering and I had too much on my mind. You were overloading me. It was Jethro, if you recall, who looks at the situation and says, Moses, you can't do all this alone. You need to appoint people. That was Yitro. That's why we call the portion Yitro. He's not mentioned here. It's the same. Moses just retold the story. And I'm not going to say this every week. Either Moses just retold the story or somebody else just retold that story. Now, so I'm only going to say this a couple times. I won't say it every week, I promise. Did the person who wrote this ever intend for you to read the other story? Because it totally contradicted the story of Yitro.
But if you're telling a story that happened 20 years ago, 30 years ago, you might skip a few things and, that's just the way things are.
Yeah, but there's a critical thing here, which is that it wasn't Moses' idea.
No.
Okay. And so one of the people, so again, I wrote about these lines. I was assigned to it. I didn't get to pick which parts of Deuteronomy I wrote about. They were given these 3 lines, write about this. And again, there's 5 people. Most of the people wrote about bickering. Everybody wrote about something different. It was interesting. We all could have kind of tripped over each other, but we all wrote about something different. But somebody did write, one of the rabbis or one of the women who, there was another woman who's not a rabbi, but she's a therapist, a writer. Somebody wrote And I'll post the link tomorrow tomorrow. So you'll see it. Why doesn't Moses give credit to his father-in-law? I mean, like, why can't he give credit? Well, that's an interesting point. And that's, I already said, it's missing. It's not here. So Mike's point is he's not going to tell the story exactly the same. But what I focused on was the fact that Moses is griping about the people here now. And he wasn't griping about the people back 40 years earlier. He doesn't seem to complain about it. Was he upset about it? Maybe. He doesn't articulate it. We also don't get Moses' point of view really in Exodus. We don't. I mean, we get a little bit, right? He does talk to God. He wants to see God at Mount Sinai. We read about him being angry with the people. We read about him defending the people. We hear his voice. I mean, it's not like he's not there, but we don't get much of his interior thought process. Here we do. But I thought that
we did later on. We did hear how frustrated he was with the people.
Definitely, and by numbers, he definitely seems to have.
Right, and I think what he's doing now, it's past numbers now, and he's looking back over these 40 years, and they said these people were just complainers.
Yeah, and so that was what I wrote about, and I only had 500 words or 250 words or less to write about it. So here's what my point is, and I'll point it out. And like I said, I'm going to record it. Look, when you retell a story, and it's what you said, Mike, if you retell a story, it's going to not exactly be the same. You forget details, you change. Yeah. But my point was actually, and I was talking to Joyce Schulman about this, was the fact that people have a different take on their history. They retell the story differently. And when you've changed, your story changes. Mm-hmm. And it's normal for people to my point is this: when two different people see something, or three or four people, everybody's going to have a different take. It's we call the Rashomon effect, right? People see things differently. And it's called after the Kurosawa film, where everybody tells a story of something that happened and it's all different. And the magistrate's trying to figure out what's the real story. All stories are different. But what's so interesting is that happens to a person. A person tells their story differently after the passage of time, after they develop an age and change their perspective. What happened, what they've seen changes, and even the way they feel or they thought they felt changes. So it's impossible for us to expect different people to tell the story the same when we can't even tell the story the same. And that happens to us all the time. Our perspective and the way we tell our own history changes. Our assessment, our own personal assessment changes because we've grown, we've changed, we've gotten older, we have different things that we've thought of. Maybe our values, have developed or changed. Our principles are reestablished or different. So there is a way for us to retell it. And what I think is interesting is that right now we're living through something that is so earth-shattering and so changes the dynamic so much that we have to be cognizant that we are going to tell this story of what we're living with now differently as the years pass, because right now we're in the midst of it. So if I tell you my take on what's going on right now, it's only my vision of it where I am now, without knowing the way that things are going to play out and with being the person who I am now. But we really do have the power to change our lives by the way we tell our stories and the way we interpret and then tell other people our stories, because those things reflect our values. Our stories reflect our values. They don't just reflect what happened. They reflect our truth and our beliefs. So that's the interesting thing that happens here, is that Moses doesn't seem to be telling the story the same way. And again, it's easy to say it's a different author. It's easy to say it's somebody who has a different a whole different vantage point, hundreds of years in a different agenda, different politics. But what really is interesting is that there is on a certain level a truth to this, the fact that we do have both of these stories together. At some point, there was an editor who decided I want both of these stories here. I want Moses' story version of it, and I want the Exodus story of it. I want both versions. And what we're left with is this lesson, which is, and again, I'm not going to talk about that to people. I don't like to bring up the documentary hypothesis and the authorship unless, I've talked about it before or people know my take on it, those kind of things. But we have the story as we have it, no matter what. And that's the lesson that I take away from the differences in Deuteronomy. And in this one, which again, I've never talked about, I've never written about this one in particular. It's just one example of many of Moses retelling the stories and then people going, but he changed it. Of course he changed it because he changed. He's not the same person 40 years later. And he now maybe feels about the people differently than he did 40 years ago. Maybe 40 years ago, the leadership of the people was still fresh and new to him. And he was maybe more gung-ho than he is today. He might be tired today. He might say, you know what? I don't need this anymore. And quite frankly, I'm gonna tell you the way I feel now. And he just doesn't hold back. So I think it's a great lesson. And I think that, this is one of those lessons that you pick up by having both versions of stories.
But on another note, you mentioned, I think it was last year, or you mentioned it every year, that this Deuteronomy was probably written many, many years later than Exodus.
Yeah. But we have both.
Yeah.
We have both.
We may want to look at one other consistency, and that's the importance of hearing. And it is mentioned there, and it is mentioned frequently, and it's mentioned in many, many of our prayers, the importance of hearing.
Yep. You're absolutely right, Joyce. And next week, when we get to the continuation of Moses' story, the Ed Hanan, that's where we read the Shema. Because the words, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, comes from Deuteronomy. It comes from literally 4 chapters from now, when we get the repetition of the 10 Commandments. And then we get this wonderful line from the Shema, which is so important that we say it twice a day, that we say, hear, listen. And so Moses has this amazing responsibility as a rabbi, as a teacher, to make sure that the people will hear. And actually, that was one of the other writers, one of the other rabbis or teachers wrote on these sections too, that it's also the fact of how we tell the story and then how we hear the story too, So, and Moses definitely has this, I've told you this before, but of course he hasn't really told them before because he told the previous generation. He didn't tell this generation. And sometimes it seems like he's forgotten that, or that we need to be reminded to some extent, or Moses maybe, we want him to, we actually are hoping that Moses will say, and you know what, do better than your parents and hear this message. You maybe have heard it from them, but let me tell you, as a person who was there, this is the way they should have, this is how it could have been. This is what they should have done. And think about it. And again, this is kind of getting back to what is Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy, again, seems to be this warning, and we're going to get to it in the later chapters. There's a lot of warning in it. It's this warning that if you don't learn, if you don't do the right thing, it's going to be bad for you, which is why some people think that at least part of Deuteronomy, or at least like a redaction of Deuteronomy, happened even after the destruction of the first temple, where people are literally coming back with the book of Deuteronomy or with the Bible now in some edited form, the Torah, and saying, you know what? The way we don't get exiled is by doing this right now. And so the people of the generation of leaving Egypt become them, in the sense that they project themselves, the generation that's writing or reading Deuteronomy for the first time, and then every generation after, including us, as like those people who don't get it right in the wilderness, and trying to tell people, do better, let's get this right this time. So it's a wonderful Jewish tradition of telling the next generation, learn from our mistakes, do better, and preserving these stories in this tradition for very important reasons, other than just knowing history. Learn from history. So, I instructed you at that time about various things you should do. We set out from Horeb, from Sinai, and traveled the great and terrible wilderness that you saw along the road to the hill country of the Amorites, as the Lord our God had commanded us. When we reached Kadesh Barnea, I said to you, you have come to the hill country of the Amorites, which the Lord our God has given us. See, the Lord your God has placed the land at your disposal. Go up and take the possession, as the Lord, the God of your fathers, promised you. Fear not and be dismayed. Then all of you came back to me and said, let us send men ahead to reconnoiter the land for us and bring word on the route we shall follow in the cities we shall come to. I approved of the plan, so I selected 12 of your men, one from each tribe. Now, this is another fundamental difference from the book of Numbers. In this case, not Exodus, but we've gone all the way from Exodus at Mount Sinai to the story of the spies in Numbers, chapter 13. We've skipped a whole lot. We've skipped a whole lot of Torah time. Again, not chronologically. We haven't skipped. We've only skipped a couple of weeks, but we've skipped all of the book of Leviticus. We've skipped all the other things that happened in Mount Sinai, and we've come to this very famous scene, which we talked about a few weeks ago in Parshat Shlach Lecha, where the people are sending in scouts. But look how Moses tells the story differently now, which is, you wanted to send spies. That's not what the Torah said. The Torah said God said to send spies, right? So we have a problem here. We have two different versions of this story, where now Moses is telling the story. It was the people's idea. So what do we do? What do we do here with this? Now, on one hand, we can just read it as it is and forget what happened earlier, which is what some people do. But the rabbis didn't do that. And again, they don't expect us to be ignorant of the Bible. They don't expect us to forget everything we read before. They want us to take in the totality of it. So what did they say happened? Well, there's a midrash. There's an explanation to rectify these two stories. And this is the midrash. The midrash says that the people asked for this. That part's not in Numbers. What we only get in Numbers is the send the spies. So we don't get why we sent the spies. And the Torah just says God said send spies. The midrash is that it's because the people asked for it. And how do we know? Because we read it in Deuteronomy. So even though the Deuteronomy section comes after the Numbers section, the rabbis say you can read the two together and understand that this is telling you the backstory, which is that the people asked for it. The people said, send the spies. Okay, so that's how you can rectify, that's how you can logically, I guess, put these stories together. Which again, now here it seems that it was the people doing something which is demonstrating their lack of faith. So they made for the hill country, they came to the Wadi Eshkol, and they spied it out. And this is all now consistent with the Numbers story. Wadi Eshkol is mentioned there. They took some of the fruit of the land with them and brought it to us. The thing of grapes, right? We read about that. We talked about that, saw a picture of it. And they gave us a report. It is a good land that the Lord our God is giving to us. Yet you refused to go up and flouted the command of the Lord your God. We're going to get to the rest of it. They have left parts out, but you sulked in your tents and said, it is because the Lord hates us that he brought us out of the land of Egypt to hand us over to the Amorites, again, or the Canaanites, to wipe us out. What kind of place are we going to? Our kinsmen have taken the heart out of us, saying, we saw their people are stronger and taller than we, large cities with walls sky high, and even Anakites, which again are these Nephilim, or these giants that the Bible says in Numbers that they saw. So here, this is told a little differently, but not much differently, not vastly different, with different people asking for the spies to go there in the first place, or God sending the spies. But this is again now kind of consistent. in the message that we're left with, which is the people gave up hope. Moses speaks up and says, I said to you, have no dread of them or fear of them. None other than the Lord your God, who goes before you, will fight for you, just as he did for you in Egypt before your eyes, your very eyes. And in the wilderness, where you saw how the Lord your God carried you as a man carries his son. What a beautiful description. Not just God took care of you, but carries you like a father carries a son. I guess in one of those little beanies, those whatever they call those things, those little holders, right? But no, I mean, a little carrying him like, like a baby, like an infant, carrying you like a child, protecting you all the way that you traveled and you came to this place. Yet for all that, you have no faith in the Lord your God, who goes before you on your journeys to scout the place where you are to encamp in fire by night and in cloud by day, in order to guide you on the route you are to follow. God is with you, showing you the way the whole time. You know God is with you. God's protected you up to this time. God's led you. When the Lord heard your loud complaint, he was angry. He vowed, not one of these men, this evil generation, shall see the good land that I swore to give your fathers. None except for Caleb, the son of Jephunneh. He shall see it, and to him and his descendants will I give the land on which he set foot, because he remained loyal to the Lord. Because of you, the Lord was incensed with me too. And he said, you shall not enter it. Joshua, the son of Nun, who attends you, he shall enter it. Imbue him with strength, for he shall allot it to Israel. Now, this is a different version of the story too. Much different. In the sense that here Moses does something interesting, which is there's one difference, which is that Joshua, according to the story in Numbers, in the story of the scouts, Joshua and Caleb are the two that come back with good reports. So two of the 12, 10 give bad report, 2 give good report. Those 2 are spared. Those 2 are Joshua and Caleb. Here, Joshua does take on this other role, which we read about in Numbers, which he's Moses's heir. He's now the one who takes over. But here, it's not that he gave a good report. Now here, he seems to just be chosen as the person who gets to take over for Moses. It's not repeated here that he was one of the good scouts. It just doesn't say it here. You read it. It didn't point him out as a scout. So it's a little different. It doesn't have Joshua as a scout, but it does have him, importantly, as one of the people who does get to go in. So it shows you there's a difference maybe of tradition of what Joshua did. Doesn't matter. Joshua is coming in from that generation. He's not just coming in, he's leading in. He's the leader of the people. And here we have this same line, which is imbue him with your spirit. Here it is give him your strength, your chazak. Sama oto chazak, or chazek, your strength, your we use the word chazak, beneath chazak, like we said last week. Be strong, be strong. In the other part of in the first telling of the story, it says put your ruach, put your spirit in him. So here we have spirit as opposed to, here we have strength as opposed to spirit. But we could say again, give them both, give them your strength and your spirit. But there is that little difference too. But then there's a huge difference here. The huge difference is, why does Moses not get to go into the land? In Numbers, we read that it's because he strikes the rock. In this version, in Deuteronomy, it's because he is there and is, as the leader, has to take responsibility for their lack of faith. So he gets drawn into, not because he did something on his own, but because of everybody else being like that generation, he doesn't get to come into.
Well, that really depends on how you read it, because if you read it, he just says the Lord was incensed with him. Doesn't say why.
I know, but the problem is, because it doesn't say why, and because he leaves that out, it seems as though from the context, Mike, that the word here says Gam bi heat anaf Adonai, that God, because of you, Gam bi heat anaf. So now you can make the argument, yeah, he struck the rock because of the people, whatever. But it really seems like it's connected to what they did then. And we know they did a lot of other stuff. I mean, there's so much other stuff that they had done. You know, we could say that that's just the last straw, that the scouts is finally the last straw. And then, of course, it doesn't stop after that. I mean, there's the Korach rebellion. There's all the other stuff that they do that's wrong. But here it seems he says, because of you, the Lord was incensed with me. So he doesn't even like say it's because of the thing that I did. I mean, you're right. It could still be, I lost my temper because of you. It's the way he tells the story.
But you know, I understand what you're saying because it's in this same, narrative.
It's the juxtaposition of this. And it's another weird way of Moses retelling his story, which is, I could have been a contender, it could have been me, and you ruined it for me, and this is,
and they did, because they pissed him off.
Yeah. Look, at a certain point, they're his responsibility too. So there is this kind of, not that he's not not that he's not claiming responsibility, but by saying it's because of you, he's also kind of saying he's not taking full responsibility for his own actions, other than you can make the argument he could also be saying, I couldn't fix it. But he is saying you. He's not saying it was me not being a good leader. He's saying you. So it does seem that Moses has an interesting vantage point by now. And again, is it now 40 years later and he's just, he's done. Just keep that in mind, that these differences, when we read them, are interesting, and they teach us something. I mean, they do. Because they're there together. I'd rather not just say, oh, they're different authors, blah blah blah, or this was written 100 years later, different agenda, blah blah. No, the editor put the stories together at the very least, and on the other hand, again, it is what we have, and let's learn from it, and let's learn that the Bible is teaching us an important lesson here in its final product, in its final reading of what we just did. We have a book that tells us that Moses is human and is reading history backwards now and saying, you ruined it for me, you ruined the ability for me to enter into the promised land. And we know that this is something he says in other parts of the book of Deuteronomy, which is, just let me go into the land, And of course he doesn't. He can't talk God into that. And we read the Midrashim a couple of years ago of Moses begging God to let him go in, and it's very powerful. It's in the Midrash. It's even more powerful than it is in the Torah, because there's pages and pages of Moses begging God, saying, please let me go in. I don't even care if I'm the leader anymore. Just let me go in the back. Let me sneak in. No one will know. Just let me step foot in it. And it's so powerful, his plea. And here we get this. You ruined it for me. So moreover, your little ones, who you said would be carried off, your children, who did not yet know good from bad, they shall enter it. To them will I give it and possess it. That's a powerful line, which is that you were claiming, your poor little kids were going to die if you went into the land. No, they're the ones who get to go in. And it's so beautiful the way that the power, the irony of what he just told them, which is, yeah, those kids that you said, you wanted to protect them, No, they're the ones who get to go in. You
You
don't.
know what
get to go in.
Rabbi, you know what I found strange is it seems like he's talking to the elders, but it's in the 40th year. So you would think most of them would already been gone.
He is. He's talking to the kids. He's
It
talking to
doesn't
the.
sound like it.
I know. Exactly. He's talking to the kids, but he's saying, "This is what I told your parents."
Okay.
That's the weird thing, is that he is talking to them, or that's the voice that he has. But again, is he speaking to us now? Is he speaking to the generation that lived during the time of, or near the time of the Babylonian destruction, the exile? Is he speaking to them? Who's he really speaking to here? And you're right. The tone of this seems to be this tone he has, like he's talking to he is. And the quote is to, "I spoke to your parents," because again, this whole thing is, I said it to your fathers. So yeah, he's telling the kids what I told your parents. This is what I told your parents. So it is kind of weird, but it is, it doesn't make it any less powerful. It makes it powerful in a different way, which is, your parents didn't listen. Maybe you will. That's the message, As for you, turn about and march into the wilderness by the way of the Sea of Reeds. You replied to me saying, we stand guilty before the Lord. And this is in Numbers. After God says, you're not coming in this generation, you're done. They pleaded, they said no. And of course, as we read, let's read it. You replied to me saying, we stand guilty before the Lord. We will go up now and fight just as the Lord our God commanded us. And you girded yourselves with war gear and recklessly started for the hill country. But the Lord said to me, warn them, do not go up and do not fight. Since I am not in your midst, you will be routed by your enemies. I spoke to you, but you would not listen. You fought at the Lord's command and willfully marched into the hill country. Then the Amorites who lived in those hills came out against you like so many bees and chased you, and they crushed you at Hormah and Seir. Again you wept before the Lord, but the Lord would not heed your cry or give ear to you. Thus, after you had remained in Kadesh all that long time. And here's the interesting thing. The chapter really doesn't end. The Christians obviously broke the chapter here, but in kind of like the way we would continue it, no. We marched back into the wilderness by way of the Sea of Reeds as the Lord had spoken to me, and skirted the hill country of Seir a long time, which means, again, we marched into the land and we went through here. We went through the land of Edom. So we marched this way, and we marched along the sea. We marched along. We actually went down here. This is the border, but this isn't the path. That's the border. The red is the border. The path goes down here and then coming back up here. So this is the way we went. So instead of crossing over here, which is what they should have done, they march down here and come back in through here, which is what we were reading about in the last few weeks. So let me see if it's in this one. Yeah, here's the march backwards. Marching down here and then back up here. So instead of even like going here, or going across here, they marched down here and then went there. You can make the argument, why did they do that? That is, again, this idea of like maybe avoiding other countries or, other cities or territories that they, didn't want to fight with, but, and also maybe walking along some riverbeds that allow them water, on their journey. So that's the journey, it goes up and down instead of going across here, which is where they should have been. Well, that's actually when they decided to fight on their own. They left from Kadesh Barnea, from where the spies went in. they went up into here and then got beat in this area right here. So let's go back to the text. So chapter 2, or this next section, however you want to look at it, maybe makes more sense starting at the chapter here and this next line. Doesn't matter. I mean, it is what it is. This is where you can kind of say the idea continues. The Lord said to me, you've been skirting this hill country long enough. Now turn north and charge the people as follows. You will be passing through the territory of your kinsmen, the descendants of Esau, who live in Seir. So these are the Edomites. Though they will be very afraid, they be afraid of you. Be very careful not to provoke them. For I will not give you of their land so much as a foot can tread. I have given the hill country of Seir as a possession to Esau. So this is a kind of a recognition that the Edomites, our cousins, they have a land. And even if they come out, they look like they're going to fight you, don't fight with them. They're not going to fight with you. Kind of a continuation of the Jacob and Esau story, which is you have your place, we have our place. Let's just leave each other alone. Of course, it wasn't always like that. Sometimes Israelites, the Jews and the Edomites did fight with each other. But again, at this point, God is saying it's not a fight we need to have. Doesn't want that. Just leave them alone and it'll be okay. What food you eat, you shall obtain from them for money. Even the water you drink, you shall procure from them for money. Indeed, the Lord your God, your God blessed you in all your undertakings. By the way, this is maybe why they needed to have money in the desert, why they needed that gold from the Egyptians, because they needed to get water along the way. He has watched over your wanderings through this great wilderness. The Lord your God has been with you these past 40 years. You have lacked nothing. So there he's clearly speaking to to the new generation, right? So he kind of goes back and forth. We then moved on, because here he's kind of telling them, but he's kind of, if you will, he's kind of now flashing back again, he's kind of going back to the story. Because again, this kind of is to the new generation, and then he goes back to, we then moved on away from our kinsmen, the descendants of Esau, who live in Seir, away from the road of the Arava, away from Elat and Etzion Geber, and we marched on in the direction of Moab. So they went up further north. And the Lord said to me, do not harass the Moabites or provoke them to war, for I will not give any of your land as a possession. I have assigned Ar as a possession to the descendants of Lot. They're also your cousins, a little further distant cousins. They're related to Abraham. So they're through Abraham's nephew, Lot, but they're your relatives too. It was formerly inhabited by the Amim, a people great and numerous, and as tall as the Anakites. They're giant. They were giants too. Like the Anakites, they are counted as Rephaim, but the Moabites called them Emim. Similarly, Seir was formerly inhabited by the Horites, but the descendants of Esau dispossessed them, wiping them out and settling in their place, just as Israel did in the land they were to possess, which the Lord has given to them. So what's interesting about this is that the Bible, Deuteronomy, is telling us here that the Edomites, the descendants of Esau, and the Moabites, descendants of Lot, through his son and grandson / son-grandson, right, through his daughter, that the Moabites and the Edomites also dispossessed people to take on the area that they live in. They have their own story. They have their own Exodus and if not Exodus story, they have their own Joshua story, their own conquest story. So they have a right to that area, and you're not going to take their territory. Up now, and the Ammonites do too, but it's just not listed here.
Rabbi,
or further north, yeah.
in the Tanakh, is there a reason why verses 10 through 12 are indented? If you actually look in the book, it's indented.
Okay, let me see what I think I know what you're talking about here.
Is that a possession of the descendants of Lot, and then the next couple chapters are actually indented?
So you're looking at in the You're looking at it in. This is in the it's
In the actual book.
in the Etz Chaim, right? In the
Yeah.
So, hold it 1 second. Um, I'm looking right here.
Because it's like there's a big dash after, right before 10. And then at the end of 12, there's another dash. And I'm not sure what that means.
I'm trying to bring
And
it.
that,
I'm trying to bring it up on the screen right now.
well, you can see the dash over, on there.
And it's 2. What is it? Right? What is it on there? Chapter 2.
Verses 10, 11, and 12.
Okay, hold it 1 second. I'm trying to bring it up.
I mean, it's not a big deal. I was just wondering.
Let me look at it. I'm trying to bring up. You know what?
It's probably, if Harvey's looking at a book, it's probably, you probably see it too, Harvey. You're on mute.
No, I see it. What's interesting, Mike, if you look on what the rabbi has, the word them,
Yeah,
and there's 4 or 5 dots. And if you look at the actual book, it's got the same 4 or 5 dots.
right. Right.
I'm trying to find a picture of it on the line. Well, let me see if I'll look for it. If I find it later, I'll
Okay.
I think we did.
It is it's interesting here that the Torah is seems to be very concerned with what other people have, and there's this kind of understanding, like, later on rabbis take on this as kind of like, why is this in our Torah? Like, what do we learn from this? And they taught, look, even idolaters, even people who are, not Hebrews have land traditions and holdings that are you have to respect. And so there is this kind of understanding that there are boundaries and borders that countries have to respect. I mean, I will tell you that, based on the Torah, which doesn't surprise us because the Torah is telling us, it's just told us now that we're going to dispossess the Canaanites. It's already said it. I think we've read it 3 times already just in the first 2 chapters of Deuteronomy. And it just said it again, that you're going to dispossess these people too. There's an interesting idea that in the Torah, that if you beat somebody in the war, then the land that you take from them is your land. Now you can make the argument, well, yeah, that's because that's just the way things were for a long time. And it really was kind of true that, what made something part of another country, or what made a country taking another piece of territory, was their army beat the other army, and then it was their territory. Now, again, that didn't mean people didn't say, hey, let's get it back, or, we got to fight them to get it back, or let's get our independence back. That happens in the Torah too. And we actually have a case where, the Moabites, we've talked about it before, where a Moabite king, Mesha, gets his sovereignty back from King David's descendants and from the king of Israel's descendants, Ahab and the Omrite kings and the Davidic kings, that Moab eventually gets independence by the king burning his son up on the wall. I mean, there is this understanding that countries have a right to kind of get their territory back, or a country can take back the territory. But there really is this understanding that if you take land in battle, that it's yours. the United States definitely did that with our battles against Mexico or against the Spanish, or and with the English, it was really taking our own independence. I mean, we've always kind of believed that if you win land in battle, that it's yours, that it's your land. Again, nowadays people say that's not the way things are supposed to be, but that's obviously very much an issue in modern day Israel. How long does the country have to have possession of the land, before it's theirs? And, this is the argument that you can kind of make with Israel today, is that Israel's been in possession of Judea and Jerusalem, Judea and Samaria and Jerusalem for 53 years. The kingdom of Jordan is only 73 years old this year. So Jordan as a country is 73 years. Israel has been in possession of the West Bank, whatever you want to call it. I don't care what you call it, really. I mean, I do, but I'm not going to argue about it. If Israel has been in possession of the West Bank as part of Israel, de facto part of Israel, for 2/3 or 5/7 of the existence of Jordan, most of the time that Jordan's been a country, on the other side of the Jordan River was not a Palestinian country, but in Israel, an area controlled by Israel, which at a certain point becomes a historical reality.
Prior to 67, wasn't Jerusalem part of Jordan?
Yep. So for 20 years, from the War of 48, 49, from the War of Liberation or Independence of Israel, for the War of Israel's founding, whatever you want to call it, for 20 years it was under Jordanian control, and for 53 years it's been under Israel's control. So obviously, I think up through the 80s, people would say, well, it was under Jordan control for 20 years and it was under Jewish control for 20 years. I think in the early 2000s, people would say it was under Jewish control for 30 years. Now it's 50 years it's been under Jewish control. So it was under Jordanian control for 20 years. Every year that this happens, every year that passes, it becomes less and less. Why does Jordan have any say over this at all?
Right.
Jordan never had a legal right to it.
But what about before Israel was a state? Was it before a country?
It was under British control.
Okay.
But
were Jewish people allowed in Jerusalem back prior to?
It was only for the 20 years that Jordanians controlled it that Jews weren't able to go to.
Gotcha.
So that's why at a certain point, the Jordanians hemming and hawing about what's going on right now, which they are doing, which they're saying that if Israel annexes any parts of the West Bank, that they're going to cancel their relations with Israel. They're going to, they've kind of threatened that this could, totally wipe out any agreement. At a certain point, you say, what right do you have to say anything about it? We've controlled it for longer than you did. And when you did it, you didn't give Jews even the permission to worship there. So I think that's an issue here. That's something that, I think as time passes, it becomes more and more, whose land really is it? So here's what happens, right? When they come to the next part of their journey, it says, get up now, cross the Wadi Zered. And so we crossed the Wadi Zered. The time that we spent in travel from Kadesh Barnea until we crossed the Wadi Zered was 38 years, until that whole generation of warriors had perished from the camp, as the Lord had sworn concerning them. So from, the time that they were not going into the land of Israel was 38 years. Indeed, and again, it says we traveled. It doesn't say we wandered. They stayed on that other side of the Jordan River for 38 years. 38 years. Indeed, the hand of the Lord struck them to root them out from the camp to the last man. When all the warriors among the people had died off, the Lord spoke to me, saying, you are now passing through the territory of Moab, through Ar. You will then be close to the Ammonites. Do not harass them or start a fight with them. So here's the next part, the Ammonites. So we read about the Edomites, the Moabites, and now finally the Ammonites. I assigned as a possession of the descendants of Lot, just like Moab. It too is counted as Rephaim country. It was formerly inhabited by Rephaim, so another group of people, whom the Ammonites called the Zamzumim, a people great and numerous and as tall as the Anakites. The Lord wiped them out, so that the Ammonites dispossessed them and settled in their place, as he did for the descendants of Seir, who live in the descendants of Esau and Seir. He wiped out the Horites before them, so that they dispossessed them and settled in their places, is still the case. So again, this is a repetition of it. Again, you could say, well, why wasn't it there before? Well, because Moses is talking about it chronologically as they moved north. So first they came in through the Edomites, through Esau, then they went into the Moab territory, and then they went into Ammon's territory. So as they go through each territory, that's when we get this reminder. It's repetitious, but again, here's now where it gets interesting too, because Moses is telling them, so too with the Avim who dwelt in the villages in the vicinity of Gaza, the Kaphtorim who came from Crete, wiped them out and settled in their place. So what it's telling us is that on the coast, the Philistine cities, which again, here he calls them the Kaphtorim, which is another name for the Philistines, actually maybe part of the Philistines. These people came from Crete. Here it says literally who came from Crete, which they called Kaphtor. That's the name of Kaphtorim who came from Kaphtor. That's what it says in Hebrew. These are people who are Greek peoples who settled along the coast. And they knocked out other people too. They knocked out these people called the Avim. So the Bible is telling us that the map has changed over the years, that one group of people dispossessed another people. So.
And again, this section of verse 20 to 23 is also indented.
Is also set up with it. Is also set off. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't bring it up right now. Yeah, I can't get it up here with this other computer I'm trying to bring up the way it looks in Hebrew. Anyways, so again, this is all explanation for why Israel is going to where they're going, but at the same time, other people have stories like this. Other people have journey stories, and so we get them here. Up, Kumu, get up. Set out across the Wadi Arnon, which is that river on the Jordan side by Syria, Jordan, in the north part, closer to the Golan Heights. I give you into your power, Sihon, the Amorite king of Heshbon, and his land. Begin the occupation, engage him in battle. This day I will put the dread of fear upon the peoples everywhere under heaven, so they shall tremble and quake because of you whenever they hear you mentioned. Then I sent messengers from the wilderness of Kedemot to King Sihon of Heshbon with an offer of peace as follows. Let me pass through your country. I will keep strictly to the highway, turning off neither to the right nor left. And we read about this last week. What food I shall eat, I shall apply for money. And what water I drink, I will furnish money. Just let me pass through. I'll pay you. As the descendants of Esau who dwell in Seir did for me, and the Moabites who dwell in Ar, that I may cross the Jordan into the land that our God is giving us. But King Sihon of Heshbon refused to let us pass through, because the Lord had stiffened his will and hardened his heart, in order to deliver him into your power, as is now the case. What does that sound like? People? Anybody? Pharaoh. Here we have another case of imutz, or again, the hardening of the hearts. Mutza levavo. I will harden his heart. And I'm going to harden his heart so that you can do this. Well, it doesn't really say that in the Numbers version, that God was kind of setting up Sihon for this. But in this version, Moses kind of says, it doesn't seem to make sense that Sihon would have fought against us, but he did. And so I'm going to say that God hardened his heart. And I'm going to tell you that this was the way it had to be. And so this is why we went into battle, to give us this land, so we would have land on the other side. Though again, in the book of Numbers, it doesn't seem like that was really part of the plan, at least as Moses is telling it now, that that it was part of the plan. Now, what's weird about this is that this didn't happen 40 years ago or 38 years ago. This happened a few weeks ago. So the idea that Moses is telling the story differently because he forgot, or because of the passage of time, or his perspective has changed, it's not the case. This battle just happened. This battle happened with that generation. That generation was the generation that just routed Sihon and Og. So why is Moses telling it differently? I don't know, but it is Moses's version, which is that God kind of set this up. This battle that we just won, it was set up. And the Lord said to me, see, I begin by placing Sihon and his land at your disposal. Begin the occupation, right? So Sihon with all his men took the field against us at Yahaz, and the Lord our God delivered him to us, and we defeated him and his sons and his men. At that time, we captured all his towns, and we doomed every town, men, women, and children, leaving no survivor. We retained as booty only the cattle and the spoil of the cities we captured. From Aror, on the edge of the Arnon Valley, including the town in the valley itself, to Gilad, not a city was too mighty for us, and the Lord our God delivered everything to us. But you did not encroach on the land of the Ammonites, all along the Wadi Yabok, the Jabbok River, and the towns of the hill country, just as the Lord our God had commanded. So we get a territory that's north of the Ammonites, but it's not Ammonite territory. And of course, this is important because much later on, as we read during the story of Jephthah the fighter, in the book of Judges, in that book, the Ammonites go to war against the Israelites because they say, you took our territory. And we say, we didn't take your territory. We took the Amorites' territory. We took Sihon and Og's territory. We didn't take your territory. It is on the other side of the Jordan River, but it's our territory because God gave us it in battle, and you didn't have it. We took it not from you, but from these Amorites, from these other Canaanites. So it's ours. We were allowed to, and God told us, you have your land that God gave you. And we actually, in Judges, we tell them that. We tell them the same thing that God told us, which is God gives people a chance to change their territory, their land. People move. People go to war. People defeat other people. So we made our way up the road towards Bashan, and King Og of Bashan with all his men. So again, this is the second part of it, the Sihon and the Og part. The Lord said to me, do not fear him, for I'm delivering him and all his men into his and his country into your power. And I will do to them as you did, you will do to him as you did to Sihon, king of the Amorites, who lived in Heshbon. So the Lord our God had delivered into our power King Og of Bashan with all his men, and we dealt him such a blow that no survivor was left. At that time, we captured all his towns. And again, according to this battle, according to what happens here, we took from them 60 towns, the whole district of Argov, the kingdom of Og of Bashan. All those towns were fortified with high walls and gates and bars, apart from a great number of unwalled towns. So there's other things that we got too. This is, this is the this is what we read, and we just read it. The question, again, and I said I wasn't going to belabor it, I'm not. It's just, would the writer of Deuteronomy have expected us to have just read the story as we did in the book of Numbers? That's an interesting question that we can ask ourselves. Was it intended that this would be the only version of the story? Because again, it's pretty much that version. I mean, the person who wrote this seems to have read it. The only question was, would they have wanted us to have just read the story? I don't know. But again, I'm not going to belabor it. But
Aren't there some
there.
people that only read Deuteronomy?
Well, I don't know anybody who just reads Deuteronomy. I think there is a theory, and there still is a theory that there was a time in Jewish history that's all we read.
I think maybe that's what I remember you
Book of
saying.
Deuteronomy, the theory is the book of Deuteronomy was written during the time of the reign of King Josiah, who lives around 600 BCE, and that Josiah had intended for this book to be read and studied and maybe read out loud every year, as a way of rededicating the people to doing the right thing, and that maybe this book was read, by itself in a day of like reading the Constitution, essentially. That this was kind of our Constitution, where this is kind of like this first part of it, the first chapters of Deuteronomy, if you will. What we're reading today is the preamble, or is the narrative, the retelling, and then the rest of it is the covenanting. And then it goes into a warning, and then it goes into Moses saying goodbye. But I don't know, look, is it possible? Sure. Was that at least in some form, maybe what part of Deuteronomy? Yeah, it doesn't, at this point, it doesn't. I mean, it's an interesting question. I don't want to say it's not important, but it's not the way we read it. And it's not there for us in that term to just read Deuteronomy. We definitely read Deuteronomy a lot. And as we mentioned, we read from Deuteronomy every day when we read the Shema. But was it meant to be read back to back with Numbers? I only mentioned that because I don't think it was. I don't think these two stories were meant to have been read within weeks of each other. Let me put it that way. And I don't know that they were meant to be held up side by side and say, look at it in Numbers, look at it in Deuteronomy. And that's kind of what we're left with. So, so we seized at that time from the two Amorite kings the country beyond the Jordan, from Wadi Arnon to Mount Hermon. Sidonians call Hermon Sirion, which is again how we get the modern day word Syria, right? Syria, from Sirion, which is what the Sidonians, who are Phoenician people from the city of Sidon, what they call it. The Amorites call it Sinir. So you can see that there are differences amongst the peoples of what you call a certain place, which we still have today. There's Native American names for places, and English names for places, and Spanish names for places. And you can name a place, but it shows us that's an old issue. All the towns of the tableland, it's interesting, it's called the tableland, because again, that's the that's the kind of that area in the Golan that is like a plateau. That's a high plateau, a mesa, if you will, right? The whole of Gilad and Bashan, as far as Salka and Edrei, the towns of Og's kingdom in Bashan. Only king of Og of Bashan was left of the remaining Rephaim. His bedstead, an iron bedstead, which is now in Rabbah of the Ammonites. So it's interesting that the Ammonites got the bed. It's 9 cubits long and 4 cubits by the standard cubit, right? So it's 9 cubits by 4 cubits. So it's a pretty big bed. It's about 12 feet or 13 feet by it's 13 feet by 6 feet, which is definitely a big bed. Not ridiculously big, maybe, but not the bed of a normal sized person, and definitely not by the 5'4", 5'5" height tall person back in those days. Must have been pretty amazing. And this is the land. In those days, Mike, you would be a giant too. You'd be a giant to them. And this is the land which apportioned at that time the part of the Aror along the Wadi Arnon with part of the hill country of Gilad and its towns. I assigned to the Reubenites and the Gadites, and that's again what we read last week. The rest of Gilad and all of Bashan under Og's rule, the whole of Argov and the district of Bashan, which is in the Rephaim country, I assigned that to the Manasseh, to the half tribe of Manasseh. So part of the Manassites, they got that. So again, that's how the 2.5 tribes wind up with part of the other side of the Jordan, which we read about before. And again, we read this last week. Yair, the son of Manasseh, received the whole Argov as far as the boundary of the Geshurites, the Machites, and named it Chavot Yair, after himself. To Machir I assigned Gilad, and to the Reubenites, the Gadites, I assigned the part from Gilad down to the Wadi of Arnon. So the southern part goes to the Gadites, and the northern part is where the Reubenites, Reubenites and Gadites are kind of below the tribe of Manasseh. So it goes Manasseh, Reuben, and Gad on that other side. We also sees the Arava from the foot of the slopes of Pisgah in the east to the edge of the Jordan, from the Kinneret down to the Arava, to the Dead Sea. So we have that area along the Jordan River, from the Sea of Galilee all the way down. We have the river valley, which, by the way, interesting, because this is still a major issue in Israel today. Who controls the Jordan River Valley? So one of the things that Israel has said regarding annexation, or what this new map of Israel, and if there was a Palestinian country, what it would look like, is Israel has said, we will not give you access to the Jordan River and to be able to cut us off from that area. That's not happening. That's not in the cards. So again, we're talking about this area right here, what we call the Jordan Valley, the Jordan River Valley. So they're basically saying, we have this area along here. We have this land, which is ours. So again, Gilad is up here. Gilad is up here, and this is not a great indication. Gilad should be higher up towards the Sea of Kinneret. This is more of the land of the Reubenites and the Gadites, and this is the Manassites up here. But it's a little low to call this land of Gilad, but it's a little further north. It goes down to here, but that's the area that they captured. So and again, now we're reading what we read last time, which is, at that time I charged you, the Lord your God is giving you this country to possess. You must go as shock troops, warriors at your head. Only your wives, children, livestock. I know that you have much livestock shall be left in the towns I have assigned you. So here he kind of Moses condenses the story that he tells the people when they ask him. They say, we'd like to stay here. He kind of retells the story saying, I told you, you can leave your family there, but you have to send your troops. Then after you've taken possession of the land, then you may return each to your homestead that I have assigned, that you have. I also charged Joshua at the time, saying, you have seen with your own eyes all that the Lord your God has done to these two kings. So shall the Lord do to all the kingdoms with which you cross over. Do not fear them, for the Lord your God will be for battle for you. So what is so important about the battle of Sihon and the battle of Og against these kings is that these are precursors of what's going to happen later. That Moses is teaching the people that, what's good about those battles that you had? It's a little preseason action, which is exactly what we're doing right now, right? We've got a little preseason action. It's a very short preseason for baseball right now, but we have a little bit of preseason to get you in the mood, to give you a little sense of what's going to happen. And I will tell you that if this preseason is any indication of the way the Dodgers are going to be playing right now, it is going to be a frighteningly bad season for anybody who's playing them, right? Am I wrong? Am I wrong? Will anybody back me up on this? Hello? They won 12-1 and then 9-2.
His season doesn't mean anything anyways, Rabbi.
21-3 in 2 games. And
they only won 5-2 yesterday.
Yeah,
Oscar and I back you up.
But I will tell you that they hadn't played a preseason game since March 11th. I had pointed this out before. Their last 2 preseason games, they won 4-1 against the Brewers, and the game before that, they beat the Padres 14-2. I do want to point out that this was happening before they went back into this preseason.
Yeah, but preseason is one thing, real games are another.
I don't disagree with you. Come on. But it does inspire confidence. It inspires confidence, Mike. And I will tell you, we have there you go. We have to have confidence. You have to have faith that, Mike, you were the one who got mad at me for wearing a Twins hat yesterday.
Got a hat.
He's going to get his hat.
All right.
Come on
Well,
back.
I have mine in the other room, but the problem, of course, is that everyone's going to put an asterisk. There we go. They're going to put an asterisk. We're going to win the World Series finally after, what is it?
Since 88.
32 years. I was saying like a couple of years ago, it would be 30 years. If we had beaten the Astros, it would have been perfect. 30-year anniversary. This is now getting into almost the time we're in the wilderness. This is almost 40 years in the wilderness, 38 years in the wilderness. So
we really have 8 more years to go.
No.
Yeah, it's going to be an asterisk. And we're going to win, and there's going to be an asterisk by it.
It's not going to mean anything.
It will. It will.
Oscar said we're going to lead Tommy Lasorda into the promised land.
All right.
Tommy, wait a second. It's Tommy, who obviously is very frail. And most importantly, I got to say, with all due respect, for Vin, man.
Yeah.
We got to do this for Vin. And because, gosh, I mean, because how many more years are we going to be able to hear his?
Well, Vinny and Tommy are the same age.
I know.
There are Joshua and Caleb.
Yes.
There you
There
go.
I love it. There are Joshua. They are. You're right. You're right. It's now, well, I don't know. Joshua, I mean, I don't know. One of them is our Moses because they're that old. But,
Tommy's Moses.
I would say that Joshua could be Oral Hershiser because let's give Oral Hershiser the respect that he's due because now he's been in that booth for long enough too. Then he's been a Dodger for long enough, and he actually was there the last time too. So, what
about Kurt Gibson?
Yeah, but he hasn't been a.
No, but come on. If it wasn't for Kurt, we would never have won the World Series in '88. He's
part of the legend. He's more part of. He's more like one of these guys.
Team.
He's one of the more of the guys in the Bible who win. He's an interesting guy, but these guys put in their time, man. Gosh.
What about Sandy?
Sandy too.
Yeah.
But Sandy's had years away too. He was a little, I hate to say it, but he was a little bit of a baby for a few years.
No, McCourt wouldn't let him in.
That's not the story that I heard.
No, he wouldn't let him in. And so his good friend at that time owned the Mets, and that's where he was at. He went to the Mets camp a lot.
This is what I heard. I heard
Yeah,
that he was mad about the book that was written. And at the time, the book, he was mad at the fact that the book was published by 20th Century.
Oh, right.
So they own the book, and the book kind of alluded to the fact that he was gay, and he didn't like that the book was written by Jane Levy, I think. So according to what I heard, this goes back to it said Koufax severed his ties with the Dodgers because of a gossip item in the New York Post that suggested he is gay. So it's the Post. It wasn't just the book. It was the Post. The article in the Post, which is owned by Rupert Murdoch's News Corporation.
Yeah,
although the team is up for sale, the story first reported in the news. The Post apologized for getting the item wrong. And then Bob Daly said it was wrong. But anyways, that's what I had heard. But
I'm glad he reconnected.
Anyways, the point is he is back. Yeah, but he did have Koufax had some years in the wilderness, to use that analogy. He had I don't remember how many years, but he had a few years in the wilderness. Yeah, it's good he's back. And Mike actually has some Koufax memorabilia in his house too. So
I do.
That's pretty cool. That's a pretty cool piece of history. Well,
They have a signed ball too of his.
That's cool too.
Wow, that's cool.
I have 2 Tommy balls.
That sounded wrong.
Yeah,
I don't think that's the way you meant it. But he is
Signed.
that doesn't make it right either. But I will tell you that they are part of our history, and gosh, would be good. Maybe we'll auction off something from the
No.
for the team, because remember, Stan Kasten has donated tickets to Dodger games for the last few dinners. Last few galas or auctions, whatever we had. Kasten always donated some tickets, so that was pretty nice of him. And now we have 2 kids from our synagogue. 2 of my bar mitzvah boys work there. Drew Troxel's in the data analytics department. And then, of course, Robert Van Scoyak, Francine's son, who's not on the online tonight, but Francine doesn't like me going on and on about Robert. But Robert's their batting coach, and he's
Is he still the hitting coach?
Oh, yeah. He's part of the reason why they're hitting, why they're getting 12 runs. So I actually saw him. I think I saw him in the stands, if you will.
That's cool.
Which is
Behind home plate.
He's like one of the he was behind home. He was one of the few people that gets to actually watch the games. I'd like to have his job just to be able to go to a game. So this guy, Robert's a young guy, and he's the guru. So I think I'm pretty sure I saw him. I tried to go back while I was watching it. I couldn't zoom in, to the picture, but I'm pretty sure he gets to be there. So we got 2 Dodgers, two Jewish, 2 of our bar mitzvah kids that I was at their bar mitzvahs, that they get to work at the Dodgers now. So
Does that make you feel old, Rabbi?
Makes me feel old. A lot of things make me feel old. And I don't get free tickets yet from them either. I don't know. Maybe they have to go up higher in the organization, but no, I don't. I'm not going to bother them. They're kids, But even Francine doesn't bother her son for tickets. She goes sometimes, but she doesn't bug him for tickets. But yeah, what a great story. So that is our Temple Beth Ami Dodger connections, and that again, the big asterisk by I don't guarantee it, but I really do think they're going to win the World Series this year, and I think it's just going to be a further joke that there's going to be an asterisk by the darn thing. So yeah, Jenny, you weren't on when we already talked about the contract that Mookie got, which is just
insane. Insane. Yeah.
I don't even know what to say. It's not the strangest contract.
Well, if you can't have Mike Trout, you might as well get Mookie Betts.
I just don't know that they're the same. They're at the same level. I think there's 2 or 3 players like Mike Trout, maybe one named Mike Trout, but I could be. Listen, I hope I'm
no
wrong.
one better than Mike Trout.
But wait a second. This means that Mookie Betts, they're hoping that when he's 39 years old, he's still going to be hitting like that. So again,
well, look at what's his face from the Angels at first base.
Talking about
Pujols?
Yeah, I mean they signed him to a 10-year contract, and people were saying that's ridiculous. He'll never be playing 10 years from now. Look at him now; he's still hitting.
I don't know that. I don't know that his value. I don't know that his value is
no, his numbers aren't as high as they used to be, but he's still valuable to the Angels.
I guess. Listen, all I know is I hope it doesn't turn out like the Bryce Harper money that he got last year. And Lord knows.
No, but Mookie Betts, you compare Mookie Betts and Bryce, and there's no comparison. He was just he's so into himself, Bryce Harper. And Mookie Betts, I don't think is.
I know. I hope you're right. I just he's not, he's 27. He's not 20.
He's a kid.
He's not. Wait, I know, but he's not 22. Anyways, it's Bryce. If he turns out to be better than Bryce Harper, then but it's such ridiculous money. I mean, is he worth? Is Manny Machado worth $300 million?
No.
Probably not. But I'm looking at the biggest. I'm looking at the biggest salaries, and now Mookie got his payday. So look, maybe he would have gotten more if they win. Maybe if they win the World Series, he would have asked for even more. So
I think that's why they signed him now.
yeah, I think so.
And maybe that's why he also agreed to it, because he's not sure what's going to happen this year and with free agency. So he said, let's go ahead and sign.
Let's do it. Yeah, well, we'll see. It puts them halfway between that. They split the difference between Bryce Harper and Mike Trout, and at least again, they
What does Trout sign for?
426.
Oh,
Wow.
$1 a year.
426.
Oh, my.
And Trout is actually from this little town in New Jersey. It's actually right outside of Philadelphia, where actually Prudential had a building there. So I used to travel there quite often over there. It's a nice little town where he's from.
To his home.
His hometown. Well, it's where his parents, I guess, live. I don't know if he still lives there, but it's a nice little town.
Well, I think as we said at the beginning, though, the one thing I think we can say about this contract is there are a few Dodgers that are not going to get paid now. And by Dodgers, I mean people who have suffered through the last few seasons of not getting a pennant. So maybe an Astros pennant, but if Jock Peterson and Justin Turner don't get a ring this year, don't get to hold up that trophy, they probably aren't going to be holding it up as a Dodger.
Yeah, because I highly doubt they'll re-sign Kiki too, because he's a free agent at the end of the season.
Kiki's another one.
He's a great defender, and he can play many positions, but he can't hit.
I like it.
Interesting that again he's popular. He's popular amongst the ladies.
Chris Taylor?
Chris Taylor?
Is that the guy?
Chris Taylor can go away any day.
Chris Taylor.
Wait. I like Chris Taylor.
I'm good, glad. I don't.
No, he's had some improvements.
And AJ Pollock can go away too.
That one I'll give you. AJ Pollock was an unnecessary and not a worthwhile addition.
And Roberts likes him. He plays him all the time. He can't stand him.
Well, he can't.
He'll get hurt again though soon.
Yeah, exactly. He can't play when he's not healthy, and he's never healthy. So that is the issue. Well, folks, I'm glad we got done early so we could talk some Dodger baseball. But I will tell you, we just remember what I tell you: the year of the asterisk. But you know what? I'll tell you one thing. We can joke about it, but it will make the inevitable next few months, which are going to be, not what we want. It will make them fun if the Dodgers win, and the Dodgers keep winning the way they have been winning the last few years and the last month. If they can carry it through the postseason this year,
they're saying all about the pitching. If they can keep the pitching up.
Well, yeah, and if we get a healthy and together, Jansen, then
he looked good the last couple nights.
I know if he's back to form and he's healthy, then you're right. And again, and we'll really need it. That will make the next couple months a little bit more enjoyable. Let's hope.
Did you guys already talk about the app where you could cheer for the Dodgers?
No, I read that this morning. That's too funny.
And you could boo the Astros.
Yeah. And they're going to pipe it into the stadiums or something.
Yeah.
So Shira, Tracy had to go up to San Francisco to visit one of her accounts. She hasn't been up in 4 months to any of her accounts. So she's going to go up and she's going to go to an account once a week, one of the nursing homes. So she had to go up to the Jewish home of San Francisco. Yeah. Interesting. The Jewish home. So they had been asking her to come up. And so they finally came up with a plan. So she went up and she took up Shira. So today Shira rode her bike up across the Golden Gate Bridge, which I was really proud of her. She rode by herself. And she rode around. Shira was riding around. And then while Tracy was at work, and then Shira was on the phone with me, she rode around Oracle, which, AT&T, Pac-Bell, whatever you want to call it, the place where that other team plays. We won't even mention that other team.
No.
So she rode around the stadium. She'd been there before. We went to see a game there.
I mean, the Nephilim.
So she rode around the stadium, and she said, the funniest thing, Dad, she said they were bringing in the cutouts that they're putting into the stadium. She said she was watching them bringing in the cutout fans that they're going to be putting in the Giant Stadium. So
The fake audience.
yeah, so they let people bring in. You could pay for yourself to be in Giant Stadium, so that's what they were doing. She was watching them bring in the fans.
Who is it behind?
Listen, if the Giants keep playing like that, they're going to have to leave those fans in next year and the years after. When Corona's gone, they still might have cutout fans.
Well, they did that at Dodger Stadium. They have Larry King and Mary Hart. Yeah.
Yeah, well, they did it for people that you'd recognize, but for the Giants, it's a joke. It's a kind of a joke because those are gonna they wanted Mookie, so they want anybody. But look, the closest they're gonna get to any Dodger is Gabe Kapler. So go have fun, Gabe Kapler.
Maybe they'll sign Kiki next year.
I feel bad for who knows? I feel bad for Gabe. Gabe's mother used to be the head of the director of the preschool at Adat Ariel.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Mm.
So and he coached on Team Israel. Not the last year, but he coached for them the last time they were in. They didn't do very well in the 2013, but the last time, remember, they almost made it to the finals but again, he worked for the Dodgers a few years ago. He really wanted to stay at the Dodgers, and he's very into eating good food, and it looks like he's on steroids, but I'm not going to say he's on steroids. I just said it looks like he's on steroids. But
well, I'm sure he can get it from Mr. Bonds.
He's in the right. You're absolutely right. He's in the right place. But look, I mean, that we can joke about it, but that other team has won a bunch of. I got to tell you, man, what Bochy was able to do in the first part of the first part of the 2010s was frightening. So I couldn't figure that out. So anyways, let's hope he stays in Giants and doesn't bring them any good luck. All right, everybody, stay healthy. And
yes, you too. Thank you.
I promise some very cool new music on Friday night. Nefesh Mountain, which is I've been speaking with them too. A great Americana style Friday night. They have banjo, mandolin.
Oh, they're fun. They play them on the Hanukkah channel on Sirius XM around that time.
Talk to Donnie and to Eric, the husband and wife. They're really the composers and singers. They usually perform with a band. You're going to see some of their songs. So they've given me permission to air their stuff for Shabbat just today. So they gave me the links, and I'm going to be working on it. Really, really nice people. I think they actually live in New Jersey, but some of the stuff they gave me was from Nashville and some of the stuff that they've done over the years. So I'm really looking forward to you having a chance to hear their Shabbat music, and you'll hear a little fiddle, a little bass, and listen, I like the music. I don't know, you may not like it, but if you like those kind of instruments, you'll love what they're going to do. So have a good couple of days until we see you, hopefully in the coming days, and maybe at bingo. Yes. And I promise you some surprise there too on bingo. So everybody be good. Oh wait, somebody wrote something. I'm going to make sure. Good night. Good night and stay healthy, everybody. All right. Bye-bye. Bye.